Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Hi, Dean.
Hey Peter, how are you?
Fine, how about you?
I'm good. Let me get blinded by the midday sun. Um, oh, let's get straight into it and having a look at obviously the overall blood work, the decision obviously at current point to look at potentially adding in anabolic now, and what would be a relatively I wouldn't say anything is ever safe from what we do, but how we can view improving the overall hormone level and athletic performance. So, in terms of the monotherapy that was ran with the HCG, with the current loads, normally when we run HCG as a monotherapy, all you're going to improve is LH signaling at the testes to bring more cholesterol inside. It doesn't necessarily correlate to an increase in testosterone, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because when we activate the LH receptor on the Leydig cell, cholesterol comes inside. The first thing that cholesterol has to do is be converted by the mitochondria to pregnenolone. And then that pregnenolone has two choices. It can become progesterone, or it can become androstenedione, or DHEA. And then from there, it can convert via the endoplasmic reticulum. So these hormones leave the mitochondria into the endoplasmic reticulum, where that has enzymes that do the transformation to testosterone. So when we use HCG monotherapy, it's not necessarily going to yield a massive increase in total testosterone if your system is already relatively efficient.
Yeah.
Similarly, 1,000 IUs of HCG every 1.5 weeks.
I was like 3 days a week. I would do the
500.
the 500 and then 750 and then 1,000. This is what the Steve protocol.
Yeah. Like, I mean, in that instance, unless we have issues with LH signaling or natural LH signaling, HCG's half-life in the body is 36 hours. So that's where the sort of every second or third day dose.
Yeah.
But it's not a predictable fashion of I'm going to get X amount of testosterone from it, because it comes back to the mitochondria and the endoplasmic reticulum and how well you are creating the enzymes inside the endoplasmic reticulum.
Yeah.
So in terms of where things are with the blood work, to review things quickly, we can see in terms of like the normally what I look at are the absolute counts of the white blood cells rather than the percentages. So you can see that percentage-wise, your lymphocytes and monocytes are high, which is sometimes a sign of an infection that was there at that moment in time or previously to that blood work. But if we look at your lymphocytes and neutrophil total count, your neutrophils are at 2.3 and your lymphocytes are at 2.2.
Are you looking at the last one? Because I sent like 4.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the one from 27th November.
Yeah. Because the percentages are high in all of them, like all 4, it's high. So
this is where we look at with a bit of nuance. The neutrophils and lymphocytes should be balanced. So in a normal immune system, you should have a relative 1:1 balance between neutrophils and lymphocytes in terms of number, total number.
Okay.
And you're allowed anywhere up to around a 3:1 ratio between neutrophils and lymphocytes. So we can see here your neutrophils, total number 2.3, your lymphocytes 2.2. They're balanced. Your immune system is in a balanced state here. And then what I look at are the basophils and eosinophil total count. And your immune system is very well under control alongside your gut health. So normally when someone has issues with their gut, what I will see is a raised eosinophil and basophil count. So with the eosinophils, you're going to see somewhere above 0.15 if someone has permeable gut. And same with basophils, I'll see top range around 0.08 to 0.1 that you're making a lot of histamine. So this is a very good white blood cell count, being honest. The red blood cell count, there are a few things here that we're seeing towards high MCH, low red blood cell count, and a relatively low hematocrit or percentage red blood cell. High MCH is a sign that you're making red blood cells that have a little too much hemoglobin inside, which is quite often a sign of folate and B12 deficiency. So when we see raised MCH, it's quite often a sign of folate and B12 deficiency. Homocysteine would be the marker that we'd use to assess how balanced your folate and B12 intake are. And from what I've seen looking through results, I don't think I've seen homocysteine ever checked. That would be something useful that you can measure. See, how much folate and B12 do you exactly require? Homocysteine ideally should be below 8 and above 6. So 6 to 8 is sort of the ideal place for homocysteine. If it's above 8 or 9,
I had one in February 25. It is 13.3.
See. Oh, I see it now, yeah. So yeah, back then you would have needing more folate and B12. If nothing has really changed in terms of your intake between then and now, then that is probably somewhere similar to where it's standing at this moment. Looking at the February test, where there's a lot of extra markers between, I guess, total immunochemistry, so your IgA, IgG, IgM, they're all nice and normal. So normally I'll use that to assess if someone has, I guess, a hidden aspect of celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. Low IgA is normally a sign of something's not right with the immune system or immunosufficiency. Obviously, your gamma globulin back then was a little high in terms of the percentage, but overall, between what we're seeing with the total globulin count and alpha globulin 1, it's relatively normal in terms of like that balance. There's nothing you can really do to influence how you produce each of the immunoglobulins between Igs or the beta globulins themselves. If we look at the thyroid, back then your anti-thyroglobulin antibody was a little on the high side back in February, and your TSH has stayed high across the sort of tests of this year. TSH, ideally, we want that below 2. And this perhaps may be correlating with why you're not seeing an improved total testosterone synthesis from the HCG. T3, the active thyroid hormone, is quite important for androgen receptor sensitivity. So when someone has low thyroid function, we're going to see interference with the androgen receptor's functionality. That TSH on the current blood test, it stayed 3 across the test. So it is telling us that your hypothalamus is having to be stimulated more to produce thyroid hormone. And that is intrinsically linked to your total T4 level of your body. So when T4 is low, total T4 is low, your body will stimulate the hypothalamus to make TRH, and TRH will then stimulate TSH from the pituitary. With antibodies, with thyroid antibodies, most people will have these antibodies in terms of like a level of autoimmunity. But it's normally when we start to see trends of them steadily going up over time where the problem lies. Similarly, thyroglobulin is the protein that makes your thyroid hormone. So you have to view it as the protein in your thyroid gland that's growing your thyroid hormone. If we attack thyroglobulin, it will cause more T4 and T3 to be released from the thyroid because you're destroying the protein that's storing it. And also, when we look at what triggers the autoimmunity towards thyroglobulin, it's milk protein, so casein protein, and gluten, more so gliadin protein in wheat, or avenin protein in oats, that causes a cross-reactivity with the immune system to attack the thyroid indirectly. Most people will have produced thyroid antibodies because at some point their gut potentially leaked a little bit, so there's a little bit of permeability of the gut, and you allow some of these dietary proteins into your bloodstream. Unless we start to see a trend or a sharp trend up with thyroid antibodies, I would just monitor. I wouldn't be suggesting that there's an issue with your gut or an issue with gluten.
It stayed like 13 and 14 all around, like it was 13.
And normally, if I start to see thyroglobulin go into the high teens, so 18, 19, 20, even though the reference range goes up to 100, it's telling us that there's a change in how the immune system is handling the gut. So, in terms of like what we're seeing here overall, if I take November blood work again as our predicted risk.
I mean, did you see the one I sent? I sent in another email. It might be better for you to check because with the CFD code, it just summarize all of the tests, and then it's easier to see which one are like red, and then like the history of that as well. Did you see that email?
Well, I have here. I've seen it connect with a health professional, and obviously it wouldn't let me into your self-decode.
No. I also sent like I'm gonna send it again because I think that would be better than checking the blood work one by one. I think it's I resent it now to your email. So there is like two attachment, and one is the lab results.
No, I don't think that ever came through because I saved in my folder here for your consult your initial email with like your test results and pictures, and then obviously you sent yesterday a reminder of an agenda, but let me see, maybe.
I sent it now in the Zoom meeting as well. Can you open that? Like on the messages.
one thing I'll say with South Dakota's algorithm, so we've seen the low iron.
Yeah, the low iron. I stopped taking iron actually because I
Sometimes low iron can be a sign of hypothyroidism as well. Low iron and low ferritin is a sign of hypothyroidism. Like the summary here, raised uric acid would be copper deficiency. Ferritin has stayed not low but high. Ferritin, I want to see ferritin below 150, which is where, interestingly, your ferritin has gone down since February, which would be losing iron storage from the body. FT4.
My prolactin is also a little bit high.
And that's normally a sign of hypothyroidism as well, which is what we're seeing in your TSH, but it's trying to figure out the root cause. Progesterone. Let me see. Now, I missed your progesterone reading is in nanograms per mil, which is probably going to be significant. Let me calculate nanomolar. On this, everything else is in nanomole, and then your progesterone is in nanogram per mil. Your progesterone is quite significant. In males, progesterone shouldn't be above 0.4, which in nanograms would be 0.125. So we can see that in your testes, when you bring cholesterol inside, you're favoring making progesterone from cholesterol. Progesterone would be an anti-inflammatory hormone in males, but it rises in relation to low thyroid, or if the thyroid is inflamed. That's probably why in the current setting we didn't see anything meaningful with your total testosterone, because in steroid genesis it all went to progesterone to lower inflammation. Fasting insulin, I want to see that below 9, so your insulin sensitivity is fine.
Yeah.
ALT is all stayed good. I wouldn't worry about too low ALT, to be honest. Basophils have stayed good. Total testosterone has moved around. So again, we can see October you were capable of 26, now you're down to 20. But the viability of your testes is in a good position. FT3, I would agree. Reference range wise, I want to see FT3 around 4.5. Eosinophils, more so the total count than the percentage, but they're low. Calcium's fine. GGT, to be honest, GGT optimally should be between 15 and 20, not 3 and 15. If GGT is below 15, it's a sign of magnesium deficiency. So where you're sitting currently, 15 is fine. So your glutathione capacity is good. Hemoglobin has trended down slightly, so there's been a loss of iron, which we've seen in your serum iron. Thyroid peroxidase antibodies were quite low back in February, and now we're up at 1.12, which again is okay. HOMA-IR is low, showing good insulin sensitivity. Transferrin stayed the same. LDH is stayed the same. So again, metabolic acidosis is low. The neutrophil percentage, okay, it was a little low back in May 25, but it's the neutrophil total count we're more interested in. Total protein, again, your total protein was raised back in February, but that was, I think, more globulin than albumin.
And I was also fat, so.
Which is, again, a sign of liver inflammation, if I'm being honest. Serum potassium, anywhere around 4, so that flags marginally lower, 3.9. The alpha-2 globulin, again, looking back at May, like I said, there's not much you can really do to influence alpha-2 globulin, although we did see that your uric acid was a little raised, which is normally copper deficiency, which will affect ceruloplasmin, which is one of the alpha-2 globulins. But to be honest, you're not going to be able to really affect that too much if it's low genetically. Looking at the rest, HDL. To be honest, HDL, if we're looking at cardiovascular disease risk, if you were to manipulate your hormones, anything above 1.1 is considered optimal. The new set point for HDL, really, most cardiovascular specialists like to see at 1.5, which, to be honest, most people will never achieve. So, with where your HDL is, you're at normal risk if you were to manipulate your hormones. And I think in terms of like the overall blood work summary, I think the main things that probably need to be monitored is why your iron has just dropped off. So there's been lack of iron absorption from your gut, or lack of iron storage. Your rheumatoid factor is quite high, so again we're probably leading into some level of autoimmunity that's probably linked to the thyroid. When we have high Rh factor, it can occur in tandem with HLA genetics. So when you're in your self-decode, do you carry the alleles of HLA, DR or DQ or DB?
You mean, is it like a gene test, you mean?
It's one of the genes that
it's not yet ready. It will be ready, I think, next week. So the genes that I just uploaded the lab work, but the genes are like coming next week. So what I
do is when your genes come back, HLA DQ and HLA DR and DB, they're all linked to autoimmunity. And when you carry these alleles, you are at risk of developing hypothyroidism, gluten and milk protein sensitivity, and in certain cases, rheumatoid arthritis. If we look at, I guess, what risk you sort of carry using testosterone, similarly to what I'm saying about the autoimmunity, you do have some level of DNA antibodies, which can put you at risk of developing something like lupus, which would be your immune system attacking itself. I'm not a big fan of doing a lot of antibody tests unless there's suspicion for symptoms, because sometimes you'll get false positives and other times you get false negatives when you're doing all these antibody testing between mitochondria antibodies and DNA antibodies. But that, considering ESR has been raised previously, which is a sign of how many of your red blood cells are dead, you're going to end up in a position where the body has periods of inflammation or acute inflammation, something as it's changed acutely. The raised prolactin, again, similarly, raised prolactin is normally a sign of four things. Too much estrogen. So too much estrogen will stimulate prolactin secretion. Not enough dopamine, so low dopamine tone of the brain, or not enough testosterone to stimulate dopamine production. Stress and cortisol, so acute stress will raise prolactin, although that's normally a false measurement, in that when you're very, very stressed, it will trigger off cortisol secretion, and cortisol will intrinsically raise prolactin. So if someone has normal prolactin all the time, and then they have one reading that's very high, it can be stress from either the blood draw, from the needle piercing the skin, or even just a stressful morning. And then the fourth one is hypothyroidism, not enough thyroid hormone, which is more so autoimmunity of the thyroid is linked to raised prolactin as a symptom. Raised prolactin in males becomes symptomatically significant if it causes impotence. So prolactin's main job in a male is to stop him from having an erection or to get sexually stimulated. Yeah. If you find there's periods where your erectile function is diminished or it's very difficult to get an erection, that prolactin is basically putting the brakes on your body to obtain an erection. When you ejaculate, which is high dopamine, it's preceded by a period of low dopamine.
Yeah.
And during that period, that's when prolactin rises to stop you having multiple erections and multiple orgasms.
Yeah, I've never been like a multiple ejaculation guy. Like I can.
If you're not having any symptoms of erectile dysfunction, the prolactin that's being measured here is more so an underlying issue as opposed to an acute problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when we see the raised prolactin, it's normally again linked to hypothyroidism, low thyroid function.
So you think I have low thyroid function, basically? This is the main concern we have.
That's the main thing that we're seeing on your blood. TSH above 2 consistently. Low FT4, and what we see in the past is high SHBG. So your current SHBG is quite raised at 48.
So TSH was 3, then 2, then 4, then 3.
Correct. It's bouncing all over the place.
And T4 was consistently like 14, 13, 14.
Correct. So in terms of what we're seeing here, there could be some level of development of autoimmunity to the thyroid, which is quite common. SHBG, again, like prolactin, SHBG will increase in response to estrogen. Too much estrogen will increase SHBG.
But my estradiol reading is like quite, it's not even readable, like it's...
Correct, and this is where I'd rule out estrogen as being a culprit in all this. SHBG will be high estrogen, not enough insulin. Low insulin states will raise SHBG, so chronically low carbohydrate dieting can push SHBG up. Or the third one that goes unrecognized are hyperthyroid states. So when we see this autoimmunity of the thyroid between low thyroid and hypothyroidism, what will often happen is if the thyroglobulin protein gets attacked by your immune system, you will make a lot of T4 and T3 or release it.
Mm-hmm.
That results in a high thyroid hormone state, which can cause symptoms like anxiety, palpitation, high resting heart rate. And then that thyroid that's been released falls to a low level. And so now your body's having to stimulate the thyroid to try and pick up your thyroid level. What we often see with SHBG being raised is a sign that the thyroid is imbalanced. It's having periods of very high and periods of very low.
What I feel is like my mornings are like very slow. Like I get up to gear pretty slowly, but once I got up into gear, then I'm productive. But I'm not a good early morning riser. Like I just difficult to get going a little bit. I don't know if that makes any sense regarding
that
this.
Can be when we've got low thyroid, it can cause neuroinflammation, and it can cause issues of like depression, where you just feel that when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, I don't feel myself. Like I don't even understand like how could I feel that bad? Like later on the day I feel perfect. So
you want to sleep sort of, or you and then once you get out of bed and get going.
Yeah. I feel like I need to sleep more because I'm afraid that I will be tired during the day, but I'm not actually. So but I feel like I still need to stay and sleep, you know, I don't know why.
Normally that, like, not laziness, but your body's basically telling you I need more rest. And that's just the metabolic effect of low thyroid. Once you get up and circadian output of cortisol, adrenaline, your thyroid starts to compensate, and then it picks up throughout the day. I think, you know, in terms of what can happen when you introduce testosterone or introduce other anabolics is your T4 to T3 conversion increases. So your metabolic efficiency improves.
Mm-hmm.
You also see SHBG. A paradox of having high testosterone is that SHBG falls.
Yeah.
And so your free testosterone goes up. In the scheme of what's being observed here at the blood work, you have a high demand for methylation. So again, that could be genetics. MTHFR, COMT, and the other methylation enzymes are probably putting a big demand on your body that whilst you're taking 400 micrograms quadrifolate, it might not be enough to fully support what your body needs.
And I haven't even started yet because I wanted to wait for the NAD supplements, which I haven't received. So this is when but I ordered it and I haven't started the folate. That's the only one actually that I haven't.
And I guess, you know, in terms of like overall, like how to avoid things like the current reflux, that could be a sign of gluten and milk protein sensitivity. So chronic reflux from the stomach is back pressure onto the gallbladder, and that gallbladder is under pressure because of issues of fat metabolism stemming from the gut. So if you have reflux as it is now, you know, you need to then view potentially if there is cross reactivity in the gut to milk protein and gluten proteins.
I don't drink milk at all, and my reflux is like, so I don't feel the burn. I just know that I have it because once I had like a 24-hour reading when they just put it and it's reflux, and I also had like several like I don't know how to say it in English. You know, when there are like things in the sinus.
Yeah,
they have
yeah.
to get them out because I had like 4 surgeries of this, like periodically, and they thought that it's because of it's growing because of the reflux. In theory, these like polyps, and I don't know how to say it in English. It's like
yeah. I mean, if your genetics come back with HLA, DQ, or DR, one thing that could have caused issues with the sinus as well is mold toxin.
Yeah.
And again, it's the thing that people, conventional medicine will say there's no issue with mold.
Yeah.
Your sinus cavity is dark and damp. When mold spores are breathed in, your immune system should kill them, destroy them. But when you have these genetics, HLA genetics, your immune system doesn't see it as a problem and lets it invade.
Okay, we'll see about the genes. Like, I hope it's coming. Like, I told them that we're gonna have another meeting on Friday next week, and it would be nice if they could.
They can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
But anyways, what's your overall like? I feel like I'm pretty healthy, so.
I mean, and what you're planning to do, I guess, side effects wise, the main things that were sort of requested from a side effect perspective. Your fertility will be impacted.
For sure.
But does that mean that your fertility long term would be impacted? I'm doing this a long time. I've yet to see one guy make himself sterile from steroids.
Yeah.
But it can be difficult with if your testes become damaged or oxidative stress causes scarring of the testes, your production of testosterone and sperm will fall. But again, I have yet to see someone damaged their testes irreversibly.
And do you advise to take ACG or HMG
during when you're taking a supraphysiological cycle? I don't believe in HCG during that setting. If you were to use a physiological level of testosterone for TRT purposes, and to be honest, your testosterone, TRT brings your testosterone to 25. That's what the goal of TRT is, 25 nanomole. If you have to use, TRT in that aspect, then you might use HCG to stimulate the testes to make its own testosterone, intratesticular testosterone, which supports the maturation of sperm.
Yeah. But then I will be on the same level that I am now, right?
Correct. So you'd be at 25 nanomole.
But possibly more free testosterone, though.
You'll have more free testosterone in theory if... So again, when we're looking at blood work, it's a snapshot in time. Your morning testosterone could be 25 nanomole, and as the day goes on, that goes in the bin. This is where doing things like the Dutch test, the dry urine test for comprehensive hormone, you're looking at the 24-hour picture. You're looking at a morning sample, afternoon, evening, nighttime, middle of the night, and that shows the excretion pattern of your hormones.
Yeah. And
I see it quite often where a guy can have very good testosterone in the morning. So obviously you're catching that circadian peak, 18, 20 nanomole.
Yeah.
But as the day goes on, the Leydig cells and LH production from the brain just drops away.
Yeah. And with injectable, you don't see that. You just have that.
You have the morning circadian peak. What you can do to try and catch some of this is you do blood tests like very late evening time and see what's the difference between morning and night.
Gotcha.
In a normal environment, they should be the same.
Yeah.
If there's issues with the brain and testes, you'll see morning time high, evening time quite low.
Yeah.
With resuming fertility, if you take HMG when you're on cycle, you're going to have stimulation of FSH to the body. You're going to have stimulation of LH. So HMG has both, but predominantly the FSH is where you take it. And that will maintain spermatogenesis.
Okay.
The problem is, whilst you're maintaining that spermatogenesis, what you do on cycle might increase oxidative stress.
Yeah.
And unless you're actively seeking having children...
I'm single now, so...
It's a strategy that you can implement if you stay on cycle. So if you were to be on cycle and you went, okay, I don't want to do PCT, I don't want to do HCG monotherapy because it's unpredictable. I'm going to take a physiological dose of testosterone, 100 milligrams, 125, which will put my level somewhere around 25 nanomole, which matches where I sort of sit now.
Do you think it will be enough for my goals?
So in terms of your goals, for what I normally suggest, if you're going to go down the route of optimizing your hormones with anabolics, your natural level is your golden baseline. If you were at 20 nanomole and you took 125 milligrams of testosterone, enantate or cypionate, given you have normal genetics, hopefully, for drug metabolism, you're going to see a level of 25 nanomole. Is it worth suppressing LH and FSH for 25% more testosterone? In theory, in my view, no. Yes, it's more testosterone. Yes, it might lower SHBG and give you more free, but it's not going to have the same impact as a true supraphysiological level. And so knowing that you can make between 20 to 25, 40 to 45 nanomole is a more appropriate increase. So you're doubling your natural testosterone, which in theory is a dose of around 200 to 250 milligrams of testosterone. if we're looking at like risk, by doing that doubling increase in dose, you're not falling into the trap of someone telling you take 500 tests and 300 primo, and that's an amazing cycle.
Yeah, sure.
What you're doing is you're making an intelligent step to see what happens when you double your testosterone. What side effects do you see? Does gyno start to present itself? And is that estrogen driven, or is it prolactin, or is it stress? What happens in terms of your lipid profile? So now you've got a baseline at your normal health.
Yeah.
HDL will drop by 10%. It always happens.
That's okay.
But what changes with your LDL value? Does it go up drastically, or does it stay relatively the same? How does your triglycerides change? Do they improve? How does your glucose, your fasting glucose change, or your insulin production because of positive changes to your metabolism? So you're going to see negatives, you're going to see positives, but you have a reflection and, okay, I put double the testosterone into my body. These are the positives I see subjectively, and these are the changes I see objectively in bloods. So normally you'd wait 5 or 6 weeks to allow the drug to stabilize in the body, and then do a blood work to assess, here's where I sat when I was natural, here's where I sit with 45 nanomolar.
So you would start with like 200, like I would start with 100 or 120 and then going into 200.
If you do that, you're not going to see a big change, because you're basically putting like for like.
Yeah, because yeah. So you would start with 200.
So you go to 200 and you'd assess, and in terms of going to 200, you probably microdose, because when you look in theory,
like I will do every day for sure. Like I will do that.
If
also because of the sub-Q option with the every day, like
if you do every day, it's a smaller peak, less aromatization potential, less reduction.
Yeah, I did I did some of the research. Like I listened to too many anabolics roundtables and everything. So
you know, and it is a bit invasive in that every day you have to do a small injection.
It's okay. I mean, I already do the BPC and like
peptides.
Yeah, I already do that. So it's like brushing teeth at this point.
Yeah, you just do. Yeah, that's why I tell most guys, just keep it in the bathroom beside your.
Yeah, it's like a normal daily activity. Like, especially with sub-Q, like intramuscular is like that's a little bit more like. This is why I was like doing every day sub-Q. Then it's like, it can be like a
less invasive with an insulin syringe, or 31 gauge needle.
And would you add like GH next to it, or 200?
I mean, in terms of like what you stand, your typical like anabolic cycle is going to be testosterone will naturally improve growth hormone conversion to IGF-1.
Okay.
Putting in a super physiological level of growth hormone, if muscle building is the goal, your sort of 3 to 4 IU's replacement dose isn't really going to make a big impact to muscle growth.
And like 8, 6.
You're going to need 6 to 8 in that super physiological range to get a higher IGF-1, which is going to help a hyperplasia and turnover of muscle cells, satellite muscle cells. And then a maintenance or longevity aspect is 3 to 4 IU's, where you're just putting growth hormone in for the sake of its rejuvenating aspects and lipolysis, as opposed to hypertrophy. If you start in that perspective, 200, 250 milligrams testosterone, 5 to 6 IU's growth hormone for 5 to 6 weeks, and assess what changes happen. Again, with growth hormone, you have to pay attention to the increase in cellular water retention.
Yeah, this is what I'm afraid of. I don't want my face to change.
You don't want a big bloated face, which comes from estradiol and mineral retention. You might slowly introduce growth hormone, so 2 IU's, 4 IU's, then 6, as opposed to going straight to 6 or 8, which will cause a response, which does diminish that your body balances out that mineral retention. But That would be sort of where you'd begin, Peter. I have someone now at 1 o'clock.
Yeah. All right.
We can resume. Obviously, we've got next week. Hopefully, the genetics comes in.
Yeah.
With where things stand, I mean, the thyroid is one of my main suspicions for you, which would improve with TRT, but it will mask if there is a problem underneath. You might need thyroid hormone support, and you might need to have a little deeper look at with HLA genetics if it does come through with
and just a quick question, like do you think it's hindered my ability to grow muscle, or is it just a health effect?
It can be a bit of both, in that hypothyroidism could affect your appetite, your ability to utilize food, affect your metabolic rate, affect how you gain muscle and lose fat. But it's correctable, which is the good thing. You can do strategies. You've got T4 in your list, T3. I prefer T3 if we're going to monitor improving the thyroid. T3 is more predictable, but it is fixable, and it will only further improve in your sort of muscle building goal overall.
Okay, so you think I can stop the ACG? That there is no point on doing that?
I think if anything, the ACG is helping your body make progesterone, which is probably helping from a.
But it doesn't really, because Steve suggested that you can find out something your system with this therapy, and then you can get some information about this, like how your body reacted, but I don't see that much, honestly. Like,
well, like I said, you're not seeing anything much because it's going to progesterone. You're making progesterone and not testosterone.
So basically, I can stop this experiment, you think?
I think in terms of what's there, there's some methylation from February, so folate, B12. I would wait and see what the genetics show as well to fully customize nutrition. But health-wise, I think you're in a position where doubling your testosterone selectively and looking at what changes in blood 6 weeks later in the short term won't bring much negatives.
All right. Okay, thank you. Don't want to disturb you more, so thanks.
No problem. I'm sure we'll catch you soon. And
thanks for your time.
Bye.
See you.